It's closed network test tier list time. Don't skip to the end of the video right away or you won't know why the characters are where they are, which is the most important part. But if you do, give me a subscribe to the channel because it helps a lot and I would appreciate it. So starting right off, we're going to go with Pale Rider first. Pale Rider is very, very powerful. The hitbox in this game are very, very forgiving. It does a lot of damage. It has a very high healing ability, which, although could be used for its teammates, really ideally shouldn't as a damage character. But disregarding all that, it is in the very, very, very strong category. It has very high damage. It has great flanking potential. It can sustain its team if it needs to be, if it's stuck in the situation. But really, it can sustain itself on a long flank. And its ultimate is extremely, extremely powerful. A character like Soldier 76 was very, very strong at the beginning of Overwatch, but it didn't even have an ultimate as strong as Pale Rider's. And the characters are very, very, very similar overall. In addition to the fact that, as I mentioned before, Pale Rider's damage is very, very high. I play a lot of Sazabi, and I found Pale Riders consistently burning through my shield, even when they were especially when they were ulting. If they're ulting and playing a decent distance, I couldn't kill them just because of them burning straight through my shield. So, Pale Rider cover, let's move on to Asshimar. Asshimar is similar to Pale Rider, medium distance hit scan damage dealer. It is situation based. So, it's a powerful character in its own right. The dynamites are excellent. Its damage is consistent. Its ult is strong on an individual level, but not really team level. It's not as strong as Pale Rider's ultimate. And you're really only going to want to play it on maps where high ground is very, very powerful, such as Flak Fort Second Defense. I played on that section of the map. It's really powerful. You can fly behind, dive things, constantly be places you shouldn't be, throwing dynamites onto the point, murdering enemies from behind, getting stagger kills. It's very good for that. It's just not something you'd want to trade it for. You wouldn't want to trade it for... you wouldn't want to trade it for a Pale Rider, a GM Sniper, or an RX-78 on 90% of maps. So, moving on to RX-78. RX-78 is actually in a category between very, very strong and nerf or the game is dead. Because just from a basic perspective, it is very powerful. It has a very powerful primary fire. It can two-shot a lot of characters at close range. It has the potential to, specifically those are the 800 HP heroes. It can two-shot, headshot, and then a body shot for every character in the game though, except for Sazabi and potentially the 1200 HP heroes. I'm not sure exactly the numbers are working out right now, but every other character, yes. The standard 1000 HP characters, yes. So, very consistent, solid damage. It has a shield to protect itself when it needs it that I can dash and not drop. Other characters that have shields, when they dash, they drop them for a moment. Sazabi and GM have that. But it has an excellent, excellent ultimate, which if you use it properly and don't let it be destroyed, can completely win games. It zones whole areas. It deals immense damage. But the most important part about this character is its Hyper Hammer. Hyper Hammer not only allows it to hit a ranged stun that is consistent, it's probably the most consistent stun in the game. Range stun in the game, just because it actually feels okay and it has a big hitbox as opposed to something like Sazabi's Tomahawk. That hitbox is horrendously small and has a really, really awkward slowness to it. But it makes tanks or shield characters drop their shield and not be able to use them. So it can completely deny a tank character from playing where it needs to be. It's not quite as strong as something like Barbatos because it will die if it holds a close corner, if it plays too aggressively like a Barbatos will, for example, but it's still immensely strong. And like I said, it's right between that area of too strong or not too strong. And this whole thing will be leading me at the end of the video into talking about why they're like that, these characters like Barbatos and RX-78 Gundam, and why they need to change, and why I'm not exaggerating when I say nerf or the game is potentially dead. So, very consistent, very powerful. Good damage, good damage, good self-heal potential, in addition to a super, super powerful ability that it shouldn't have. So, moving on to Turning Gundam. Turning Gundam is getting it put into the numbers are too low situation. It's good, don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed playing it, but why would you play Turn A Gundam over RX-78? Why would you play it over GM Sniper? This game, because of the mobility, isn't so nuanced like Overwatch is in certain ways, where you could play a character like, you know, let's just say if Hanzo only had its storm arrows, for example, why you could play it on maps where it's in between what a Widowmaker would want to do, and then like a character like McCree, the mid-range, something like Ashe from Overwatch's normal damage, or like Asshimar level damage. Why, like in a situation where you actually want to need that, there's nothing like that in this game, really, to be completely honest. Which is why Asshimar is also not as amazing as it could be. So it has an okay stun. It has a good self-healing ability. Its ult is solid, but on certain maps it's not that good at all. So it just falls into the numbers or too low situation. Its primary fire could be buffed. It's getting an awkward situation where its primary fire is too consistent, where you don't want to buff it too much. But it's really competing against GM Sniper, so that's kind of the issue. So GM Sniper 2, we're putting in the very, very strong category. It's extremely powerful and always inherently broken. In this game, the hitboxes are so massive that it's so easy to hit it. I've been playing some aim labs, but I'm a main tank player. My aim is not that impressive, and yet I felt extraordinary in this game because of the way the hitboxes are and the fact that there is not instantaneous movement. So that's why it's really, really, really strong, even in someone who's not like that great. Potentially, it could honestly be getting into the area of nerf where this game is dead just because of how powerful it is. But then again, a character like Widowmaker has always been like that, and it's never been nerfed in Overwatch. It's just something you kind of have to deal with. Except the problem is you don't have tanks that can contest it that well, like Wrecking Ball or Winston, that are currently keeping Widowmaker in check. You do have characters like Tracer, or in this game, Zaku and Barbatos and Exia, they can take care of it, so it's not like so bad, but even in those situations, the hitboxes are so big that a really, really good GM Sniper 2 player would honestly have a good chance in beating them in 1v1s. So, very, very strong category. Moving on to Zaku II. Zaku II is also in the extremely strong category. I know it was overshadowed by Barbatos, and it is just because of inherent issue. And it wasn't quite as flashy as Exia, but it has incredible mobility, incredible escapability. Its Cracker Grenade is also really good for moving characters around when they don't want to be moved around, which is actually quite effective. Its ult is extremely strong, considering how fast it charges and considering the fact that it is a really easily aimed slash, and stun ability allows it to 1v1 tanks like Sazabi, which it shouldn't be able to, which is why it also has an argument for being in the same category as Gundam, where it's kind of getting towards the super broken-ish, but like inherently broken category. But the thing is that we didn't have enough players who are really, really talented as Zaku. If you get a 4.6k Overwatch player on Zaku, like an OWL player, they will trash everybody. It will not be, there's nothing you can do to counter it. It will just happen. So, Exia is very, very powerful, but it's also going to get put in one of these gaps, but it's not in the top gap. I know that people are going to get a little bit upset about me for this one. It's really, really good. I'm just comparing it to the other two. If I wasn't comparing it, I put it in the very, very strong category. Incredible level of movement. Its ultimate's really powerful. The ability to stun through shields. Granted, it doesn't do so much damage that you can't tank against it. You can on Sazabi, but it still has the ability to burst through shields in a way that makes it so main tank characters can't play the game properly. It just doesn't do enough damage to actually follow up on it. But it is not as good as Zaku. It is not as good as Barbatos. So for being the worst flanker, which they're all amazing, it's getting put in between the very, very strong and situation based. Barbatos is what is majorly wrong with the game from a balance perspective. It currently has the ability to smash through shields. Now, people are saying, hey man, just dodge it. I'm a 4500 Winston player, main tank player. I'm very, very good at mechanical stuff in regards to positioning. I can tell you for a fact that you cannot outplay a good Barbatos player. They have 3 dashes. You have 1. The hitbox of their slam ability allows them to dash through you in a way where no matter where you dash or when you dash, they can still hit you. They will still one-shot you. That is not, but the issue with this is not like, okay, it's just too strong. The issue is, even if the slams didn't do any damage, it would still be an inherent counter to a character that has to play in a certain way and has one objective and one job, which is to create space, which you do by holding chokes, holding corners, pushing into areas. And Barbatos inherently makes it so you can't play the game. You can't do your job. The only reason I was able to get away with it and do a lot on Sazabi is because the players weren't that good. To be completely honest, I wasn't playing against 4.5, 4.6k level Barbatoses. Every now and then I ran into one that could just make it so I couldn't play the game. I just had to make it as hard as possible for them or try and avoid them. Otherwise, there's nothing I could do. But that's what Barbatos is. Barbatos is currently making it so... It's currently basically making it so... Rock, paper, scissors isn't rock, paper, scissors anymore. It's rock, paper, and scissors that only has one little... one of the little scissors on it. And it can't actually cut paper properly. That's what it's turning Barbatos into, or Sazabi into, sorry. It's inherently taking its role away. It's turning the game into like a dive Call of Duty instead of more like a proper Overwatch style where main tanks can play in their position and do their position and do what they need to and hold space and push into space. Because basically what it is that any area that has Barbatos is in nearby a Sazabi, or really any area that a Barbatos could be, a Sazabi can't play where it should be, where it needs to be. Which is why I'm going to skip ahead and go straight to Sazabi. Sazabi is situation based. This character should be A at minimum, because its numbers aren't that high, its shield's low. If Barbatos was in the game, I'd put it in very, very strong. Just because of what it does. It makes space, which is areas that your team can play in and their team can't play in. It allows you to gain resource advantages, gain advantages in the game that allow you to win. The whole game comes down to how these characters are supported and what they're enabled their team to do. But Barbatos makes that impossible. So when I say situation based, it's, is there a Barbatos that is decent, that it has a brain that's like more than 20 brain cells, or is there not? That's the situation. And so that's how it goes, because Barbatos is inherently designed to, not only is it inherently designed to counter you because you have this, you play at the same range, and yet it just beats you at your range and you can't poke it out and you can't run away from it. And the stun that you have is so inconsistent you can't hit it properly on a Barbatos. And also Barbatos is, I'm confident that Barbatos's hitbox does weird things when it's using its abilities, because I've seen things like a Marasai's hook go through a Barbatos, which it did seem overall pretty consistent to me before that. So, yeah, and just in general, why I wouldn't put Sazabi in like A or S plus category if there was one, and it wasn't this Nerf War Game is Dead. They're like, why it wouldn't be that amazing even if Sazabi wasn't there, or Barbatos wasn't there, is because it's not that strong. If you look at a game like Overwatch, Winston has 250% or 2.5 times as much HP as a character like Soldier does, this standard 200 hit point character. Sazabi only has 40% more, and yet it has the same job. Yes, it can deal more damage, but that doesn't really matter because your job is to make space, and targeting things that are close by that can run away from you doesn't really make space like playing your position is, and there's no consistency to it, and it becomes a mechanics-based issue where you can just get out-mechanicked by the fact that your character is trash. The characters that can out just inherently mechanic, it's really out character Sazabi. Barbatos, without a doubt, just because of how it can play around any corner, a Sazabi has to go through those. It smashes it, it's dead, runs away. RX-78 can mace Gundam and make it, or RX-78 Gundam can hit Sazabi with his mace super easily, or force the Sazabi to not play in an advanced position. Is really what it is. It's about the threat. You don't have to actually hit them with the cooldowns to have an effect on them, which is the issue. You can't play close consistently like you can on a character like Winston, knowing that if you effectively use your bubble, you're defended and you're holding an area. That's why the shields are just damage blockers. They're like extra temporary HP. They're not cooldown blocks, which is what the characters need. And Exia does it to some extent. Turning Gundam does it to some extent, actually. It's just that it's harder to do. It's still very possible. Like, you can dash on top of the Sazabi and then use it. You're just risking taking a lot more damage in the process, and it's not as good as other characters. And Zaku with its ultimate, and Asshimar with its ultimate. So really, we're looking at like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a third of the roster that can, and an enemy Sazabi that can just inherently counter it in a really awkward way that makes the game hard for them to play. So, sorry, big ramble. Moving on. Guntank goes into the Guntank category, which means absolutely horribly terrible. Please don't ever touch this character. Ever. Ever. Just don't. It doesn't do anything. The only good capability it has is its ultimate and its resurrection ability, but it doesn't even have the best resurrection ability in the game. GM Sniper does. Ashimar's is also, or Methuss is also very, very good. They're very equivalent. Guntank's is quick and nice, and you can mess around with it like ranked, but you are still exposing yourself. And if the enemy's paying attention and they know you're a Guntank player, they'll still trash you as soon as you go for the res. The ult is good, admittedly, but you're throwing every other time that you don't have it. Stop playing that character, please. Methuss is in the very, very strong category. Because characters don't naturally regenerate HP while they're attacking, while they're shooting, it does this thing where it makes them have a very, very low uptime. Uptime is how active you are, how actively you are attacking, doing your job, essentially. Characters like Sazabi, when they get damaged, they have to go run off and find a health back, or passively wait and recharge your health. And it takes like at least 10 seconds. I don't know numbers. I think it's more than that. I think it's 15 from like all 1400 hit points. It's very slow. You can't have a situation where you're active for 5 or 6, 7 seconds and then you're out of the fight for 15. That's useless. Your character's trash. Why even play it? So if you could attack during that process, you could shield yourself and heal yourself up the remainder of your HP and have a higher uptime, but you can't. Or can you travel around with your boost or your Tomahawk on Sazabi because they cancel it, but they cancel the healing also. Side note. Methuss, however, adjusts all of that. It allows you uptime. It can target a certain character in your team and say, you will have as much uptime as you want. Usually you're going to want to put that onto your Sazabi, assuming they don't have a Barbatos. If they have a Barbatos, then depends on how good they are, still put on your Sazabi, but, you know, in that part, just heal over. Ultimate's very powerful in Asshimar. The constant ability to just heal and not make your team have to run off or wait is very, very powerful. And it does a solid amount of damage. And its turret is annoying and is very good for fighting against counter divers if you put it in a way, or sort of fight against divers if you put it in a position where enemies can't see and break it earlier, and it'll just attack them when they engage. GM is very, very strong. The ability to shoot and defend at a medium range is very powerful. Its grenade also allows to adjust a lot of the stuff that we talked about with Asshimar. And granted, it's awkward, it doesn't fly very far, and it's slow. So it's honestly best used on yourself frequently, or like a Barbatos that you know is going to be in a certain spot when engaged, like because it hits a slam. Or, yeah, its C4 is very, very strong and is excellent for marking and destroying a corner. It honestly does Sazabi's job better than Sazabi does in a lot of situations, because you can put its C4 into a choke and blow it up as the enemy walk through, and the enemy gets split in half because the ones that are through the choke go through and they are damaged and they can't do anything about it, and the ones on the other side have to slow down, which is basically what a main tank is supposed to do for defensive terms. And also, GM has a very powerful ability on destruction maps where it can lock down 2 objectives at once. If you plant the bomb, you can put your C4 on it and just wait till they start diffusing and blow it up, and anything will die. Unless they're paying attention, they get off and get back on. But by then, they've lost the progress on their defuse and they're taking a bunch of damage. They'll probably die from somebody else. But you can stop any plant by putting your C4 on the point and then observing the other one. And as long as the enemy doesn't know it's there or paying attention and break it, you can get a free stop on anything. Super powerful in lots of situations. It has the ability to 1v1 most of the characters in the game. It can 1v1 Gundam if you outplay it, Pale Rider, GM Sniper 2, Zaku, Methuss, Exia, Asshimar, not Sazabi, Tourney Gundam, Guntank, Dom Trooper, and Marasai. So, Dom Trooper, I'm doing this this tier list in regards to like just a ranked gameplay. In ranked, it's very, very powerful because it also has it has an inherent issue, which is why I kind of want to put it in the same area as the Gundam stuff, but it's not as much of an inherent issue as something else is. The problem is that it doesn't give a bubble like Zarya is, that gives a consistent CC resistance shield that benefits tanks a lot and doesn't benefit characters like Zaku and Tracer. What it does is it drops a flat amount of flat amount of armor HP, which disproportionately benefits smaller HP targets, which are also harder to hit and usually have higher damage. It's like the issue of why after a while Brigida and Tracer were played together so consistently, and why Brigida's armor packs were so problematic as a whole is because you can armor pack anything in the game, and if you hit it on a squishy target, they have the ability to 1v1 their opposition. So a Tracer can 1v1 another Tracer with an armor pack and be drastically worse than them. So if they're equivalent, it's going to beat them. And it just inherently breaks the game. Dom Trooper for sure should have its ability changed to a CC resistance bubble, like Zarya has. If they want to give it like a slight healing effect to it, that's okay. Just, maintain what it is. But right now it's problematic. On a character like Sazabi, it's not that big of an issue. But on a character like Zaku, when the good Zaku players start playing, nothing will be able to beat it. I'm not sure if any of you ran into people in stacks playing with a Barbatos and a Dom Trooper, but if you noticed a Barbatos running around with a consistently weirdly high amount of HP with armor on top of it that was unkillable because there's no decent stuns in the game, like Flashbang, nothing consistent, and you couldn't damage it enough to force it out. That's the advantage of a Dom Trooper tossing its armor pack onto a character that shouldn't be able to have it, or shouldn't be able to have this effect. Now, in a team setting, it might be not strong enough from its damage and basically its damage perspective that you could just, and inherently what it is, that you could just bypass it and dive the enemy backline and kill them all before it could pack something. But even then, it could just use it to counter pack. So it's very strong, a little bit inherently broken, needs some adjustments. Marasai is in a numbers too low category for sure. I hit 4,400 on Roadhog. Roadhog has a situation where you walk around a corner, even in super high damage metas, which is when I played it. When the damage was so high, you didn't play a main tank character, you just played Roadhog and Zarya, where you hook something, you have enough time to pull it in and kill it. Almost every time, unless you're hard feeding. On Marasai, that's not the case. On Marasai, you have to play like a damage dealer, like a hit scan character, like Pale Rider or GM Sniper, to be able to hit your hooks and still survive to kill it. And if you're doing that, then why would you not just play GM Sniper? It's just as easy to hit. It's easier to click on something's head than it is to hit something with a projectile. So why would you play Marasai? Its primary fire damage is not that high. Granted, it has a very strong ultimate, but you have to play like another type of character that has worse range, worse consistent damage than other characters. To be able to get kills. It needs to have a health buff. Really is what it needs. A health buff, or ideally I'd like to see something like a damage reduction when you hook something and shortly after you hook something to justify and incentivize it hitting its hooks. So, summary of the whole thing. Lots of characters are pretty even right now because everyone's just experimenting with the game. When players get a hold of when really good players get a hold of certain characters, they will become insanely busted, like Pale Rider, GM Sniper, and Zaku. They'll become extremely powerful. But the biggest issue with the game from a balance perspective is the ability of how tanks can't, and shield characters, but primarily Sazabi is really what I'm talking about. And any other characters like Sazabi that they'll add that play the same role won't be able to play their role. And if they're not able to play their role, why play them? You should play something like a better version of Marasai, or honestly just another damage character, because it's just not strong enough. And it doesn't have the ability to put its foot down and say, I'm a tank, I'm going to do what a tank does. It will just get stunned, be forced to drop its shield if it's hit by Gundam, which it's really easy to be hit by, or it'll just be trashed randomly all the time by a Barbatos, or forced to play poorly and in bad positions and not in aggressive positions ever by a Barbatos. And that's the issue. I personally would love to see them trade Sazabi's ability to shoot and shield at the same time for a shield that cannot be stunned through. That would be extremely good, and it would allow you to effectively use the shield to block stuns. And they can keep its strength as it is. It can be broken, that's acceptable, but you shouldn't be able to just walk through a Sazabi like you can. If a Sazabi stops to shoot you and you shoot it in that process, then so be it. But that's a more balanced perspective. It's more like a Reinhardt with a shotgun. I'm going to make a video on all the game things that need to be adjusted in this game, so keep an eye out for that. I do have a lot of good insight to share on that. I know for a fact because I've been thinking about it a lot. But yeah, thanks for watching this video, guys. If you haven't seen my mobile suit guides for the 6 that I've done, go check those out. They're really good. To be completely honest, I put a lot of effort in them, and it's coming from a 4500 Overwatch player. Top 17 rank in this game, apparently. Soloing and duoing, like 90% of it, and the end. But yeah, guys, take care. Peace.